Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nurturing Creativity, Balancing Practice and Parenthood. My name is Jen Detlefson, and I am honored beyond words to introduce our panelists for today's conversation. So first, we have Sally McCubbin. Sally is a solutions-driven designer with a passion for problem solving. This manifests in her faceted career as an artist, digital marketer, designer, and entrepreneur. She has maintained an independent art career for over 15 years while running her design business, teaching at Sheridan College, and leading workshops internationally. Sally's foundational studies in craft and design established her intimate relationship with the aspect of quality in material and standard. Her artwork has spanned a variety of fields, from industrial design to public art, for which she has received a number of grants and awards. In 2008, Sally founded Studio Huddle with Aaron Userin, a studio/retail/exhibition space that pooled the efforts and resources of 12 independent creatives. At Sheridan College, Sally has taught courses in material exploration, design, professional practice, glassblowing technique, and business planning. Imparting on her students the realities of fieldwork, she suggests that the value in trying new things is in maintaining the courage to fail. Sally's work in glass has provided her grant opportunities for professional development and research throughout the United States, Scandinavia, Germany, Australia, and New Zealand. Born in Toronto, the youngest of four, Sally learned to find solutions at an early age. Today, she continues to explore and strategize in Toronto with her husband, illustrator Clayton Hanmer, and their daughter, Alice. Thanks, Sally. Next, I'll introduce our dynamic Scandinavian duo, Ned Cantrell and Kara Newholm. Art has always been part of the life of the Danish glass artist Kara Newholm, who finds her passion creating with her hands. Newholm has been working with glass since 1998. In 2002, she graduated from the Royal Danish Academy of Art, School of Design, Bornholm, and together with her husband and collaborator, Ned Cantrell, she opened the hot shop Newholm Cantrell Glass in 2004. Newholm's sources of inspiration are dynamic and constantly moving. As a creator, Newholm always transfers a part of her personality to the pieces she's working with, which has enabled her latest engagements with subjects such as alter egos and doppelgangers. On to Ned. Ned Cantrell was born in England in 1975 and lives in Denmark. His colorful and often humorous works refer to street art, sci-fi, kitsch, tattoos, and other manifestations of pop culture. After joining the ranks of fatherhood, Cantrell created a series of works in which his daughter Mathilde is the main subject. She is seen riding a rocket to an unknown but dramatic future, flying to visit the moon and see the stars. Cantrell co-founded the studio Newholm Cantrell Glass with Karen Newholm in Denmark in 2004. Cantrell executes his pieces through an eclectic assortment of styles and techniques found in blowing and hot sculpting traditions, which he combines in contemporary ways. His work has been widely exhibited in Asia, Europe, and the United States. And now, Jessica Jane Julius is an artist, educator, collaborator, performer, and mother who creates glass installations, objects, and imagery that examine how fear is infiltrating the ways in which we navigate the world, presenting a look at the anxieties and complexities of our current culture of fear. She is the co-founder of the artist collective and performance group, the Burnt Asphalt Family, producers of collaborative, participatory, and edible works. Together, they have performed at prestigious venues, including the Corning Museum of Glass, the Chrysler Museum, and Urban Glass. Her mixed media works have been exhibited nationally at venues including the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Museum of American Glass, New Jersey, and Market View Arts, Pennsylvania. She has been awarded a York Cultural Alliance grant and residencies at the Creative Glass Center of America in Millville, New Jersey, and the Museum of Glass in Tacoma, Washington. Currently, Julia serves as the Vice President of the International Glass Art Society. Jessica is the program head at Tyler School of Art and Architecture and maintains a studio in Philly. Thank you all for agreeing to be a part of this much needed conversation for our community of makers, thinkers, and leaders. And thank you, audience, for tuning in today. So let's begin. Back in 2019, when this panel was first announced, I released a questionnaire to the community to gather anecdotal data about the lives and concerns of parent artists. The questions we start with today are based on the stories gathered from the respondents and filtered through the lens of academic writers who have been documenting the Western art world's problematic attitude toward parent artists since the 1970s. But that's just the beginning. The format of today's conversation is designed to leave time to pursue concerns that you, the audience, are most passionate to discuss. I will, however, ask that we save the audience questions for the second half of the program. And if everyone would please now mute their audio and video if you are not one of the panelists, and save your audio and video participation until the open forum begins. Thank you very much. So, first question. I'd like to start off by asking each of you to comment on how your experience of parenthood and the demands of family life have affected your practice. To quote Meryl Chernick, author and curator of Maternal Metaphors, when an artist chooses to become a mother, or parent, of course, she makes the difficult decision that further complicates the already complicated existence. Busy becomes frantic, passions are divided, financial and time constraints multiply. So, how do you find the time to focus on your work? What personal support structures allow you to maintain studio time and sanity? Have you had to turn down or qualify opportunities available to you because of family responsibilities? So, who do we have who wants to dig in first? All right, Karen and Ed?
Well, I think we haven't had a hot shop without children for more than 2 months. I think we started in August, and then August 2004, and then Matilda came along in November 2004. So everything was, it's been part of our practice the whole way through.
But it was really hard. We started a workshop while Karen was pregnant, and we were working jobs at the same time, building equipment. It was crazy hard.
So that's not an advice that we can pass on to other creative people. But because we've been a small business all the way through, we've always been able to adjust what we're making so we could survive and support the family at the same time. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll go a little bit, but I think you asked a lot of questions in that one question. And I think, the biggest things are, for myself is that I have a really labor-intensive practice with lots of multiples, a demanding kind of studio practice, but it's always been responsive to the world. So even before I had a kid, like conceptually or what I was doing. So, the ideas were there, have evolved, with things happening around me, but I think the demands of the studio practice have changed. And one of the things that I did was I started a drawing practice that I didn't have before. So now I balance between going from my house to my studio to school, and I do this kind of triangle path of making. And, within that, I think the thing that I figured out is time and money are, really, have changed after having a child. It's, you have to feed somebody else. You have to think about what they are doing at all times. So, like how to switch brains from different things and to go back and forth between those things, was a big change for me.
I can go. So I agree. There's lots of questions. I'm going to try to just focus on maybe the tangible parts of how it's changed my practice. I guess for me, it's changed everything in practical ways for me. So I did a lot of kind of stepping back from my career and taking a look at it pragmatically as far as what was reasonable that I could move forward with and how I wanted to reevaluate and change because my life had changed so much. So for me, I think my whole practice has changed from like the details of how I produce things, how I, how I teach, how I kind of engage with creative ideas. I've kind of, I think, kind of reinvented my career as a result.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Would anyone say that they have perhaps had to turn down or qualify or modify opportunities? We can break down these questions into more digestible parts now. to turn down or modify opportunities that were presented to them because of family responsibilities. Does anyone want to tackle that portion?
I'm sure we all have. At such a level. I mean, how do you not? You know, when depending on the age of your child, or if you're having more than one, your financial responsibilities, you know, those kinds of things, and time, if you're willing to leave or not. Like, I remember the first time I left Tyson, I went to teach at Pilchuck, and he was just over a year. And I mean, I cried every single day. You know, it was like such an emotional strain. And, you know, and then the internet there and the cell phone service wasn't great. So then I couldn't see him. And then, you know, it was this like, you know, so I remember, you know, really specifically picking and choosing certain things based on the amount of time I would be away, you know, because it was also, we couldn't afford to bring him and bring my partner, you know, so there, you know, the financial responsibilities come into that too. So you either decide to go and take these opportunities, or you decide not to, on many different factors there, you know. And I think, you know, one thing that really happened to me is Tyson got sick when he was 2. So there was a full year when he was in and out of the hospital. So, you know, that was a complete gap year. You know, I would teach and then I would be, you know, at home with him or in the hospital. So, you know, those kinds of things too.
Certainly the demands of having an unwell child, just, you know, they trump everything else. That becomes like your entire world. Can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to comment on that particular part of this series of questions, the either turning down or having to modify opportunities? And we'll be able to circle back to that a little bit later when we look specifically at residencies. But okay, I'm going to move on to the second question. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper and investigate how your personal identity has changed since becoming a parent. Feminist art history scholars from Rachel F. Buller to Andrea Liss have grappled with the devaluation of artwork that addresses parenthood as overly sentimental, unserious, and bourgeois. Whether or not your identity as a parent makes it into the conceptual framework of your practice, do you feel that you are judged differently from your non-procreative peers?
That's interesting that you say artwork based on parenthood is basically kitsch or irrelevant or something, when it's such a big part of everybody's lives.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sure, definitely. Being a parent changes the way you see the world completely, fundamentally. For myself anyway, my work changed a lot from playing with the kids. Because I knew I was coming on this discussion, I thought about it, and I realized the time spent by playing with Matilda's little pet shops and Lego with Arthur, and this has all fed my ideas. So the space, the time as well. Kids take a lot of time. You have to spend a lot of time just pushing them on a swing. Hours and hours, and sitting in a sand pit. All of that time is time reflecting and digging into my subconscious and getting ideas. I think it's very positive. I think play is very important for creativity. And playing with kids, playing with my own ideas, yeah.
And it keeps changing as they grow older as well. It's like it's one change when they're born, and like that changes everything. But it keeps changing as they're almost teenagers, both of them. So it's a different way that we can involve them, and that they impact on the way we work. There's more time, but also the things that we can discuss with them, and
And now it's 3D printing and animation that they want us to play with them, which is also creative and inspiring.
And also questions about the environment, how we can do this better for the environment and for their future, and how they can maybe, you know, come with ideas how we can do that. So it's changing all the time, and it's great most of the time.
You heard it here, folks. I think this is the world's first recorded instance of a Littlest Pet Shop as an artist reference, which I'm very excited about, personally speaking. All right. Thanks, you guys. That was awesome. Jess or Sally, do you have any comments on identity and your how you're received personally, or your art is received post parenthood?
I've got an anecdote about an experience of how my identity has changed and how I think I was perceiving reception more than actual reception. But when my daughter was a year old, I brought my husband and her to Pilchuck the last time I taught. And that experience I was really not prepared for. I didn't prepare myself for kind of realizing that I had these two conflicting, not necessarily conflicting, but these two identities. So on one hand, I was attempting to be myself and, act as the somewhat intense teacher and glassblower on one hand, but having my family in that space with me was just this exhausting kind of transfer back and forth between these two personalities, because she was just one. At that time, I really hadn't reconciled the fact that I can be, a nurturing caregiver and the person that I am or was before at the same time. So I really felt this struggle to kind of maintain what I like to do at Pilchuck, but also, be a mom to this 1-year-old. So that, like I said, I was like really unprepared, and it was an exhausting experience, but it was a pretty good way of recognizing that this is a real transformation, and that, I've got to navigate that. And as far as reception, definitely it was very different having a family at Pilchuck, and that created a ripple of difference kind of in the community. But there was definitely no, there was no negativity attached to that reception.
Yeah, I would say that, I refer to like pre-Ty, because my son's name's Tyson. So I'm like, pre-Ty, it was like this. Post-Ty, it was like this. And so, I kind of like, that's such a marker of my life and how I was living my life, including identity. And I think, when we wear all these different hats of being an educator, a collaborator, a mother, an artist, a friend, a wife, a daughter, I found it was a real struggle in the beginning, because I was relearning myself and like the new me, like what that meant and how I had to navigate the world. But then I figured out the best way to kind of tackle that was to try to fit everything into each other, to try to make like kind of a full circle creative life that, Tyson is at school with me and, is with the students, and he comes to my studio, like trying to merge these roles, but also know when it's important to kind of keep them divided. But I do think that I've experienced negativity in the sense of being a nurturer and an educator. And sometimes that can be seen as a weakness, and the gender roles, like being a female educator in the United States, that it's more common for the woman to, be that nurturer also in the department. And so I take on a lot of emotional labor for a lot of people because of that. And I'm naturally that way. I can't help it. I want to nurture. And so what I've started to think about is that as a strength rather than as a weakness, because it means that I'm not being selfish, and I'm thinking outwardly, and I'm trying to kind of, give energy to other people. But there is, I think that that's a big conversation to have just in education, in gender, in a lot of ways. So
yeah, wow, absolutely. I think Sally, you were talking for a moment there about transformation, and that transformation to motherhood, which is something that in our culture is not really marked. We have all these other markers and rituals that note different phases in people's lives, but there seems to be other, than the bridal shower or the baby shower. That doesn't really count, I don't think. But there seems to really be a lack, I think, in that. So I think that's a really interesting point you made there. All right, thank you, everybody. So third question. Now we're going to turn a little bit to the practical. For this question, I'd like you to share how your government or other institutions, if you work for a school or other major entity, so on and so forth, so how your government or other institutions have supported your career. Every country, of course, has different levels of support for their creative classes, and luckily, with our international group of glass stars here, we should have some fantastic variety. So in honor of this year's intended venue, shall we start in Scandinavia?
Yeah, well, we're the spoiled kids in class.
Yeah, in many ways.
Yeah, Denmark is a welfare state, so the government has our back. Really, we pay a lot in taxes, but we also get something for it. So it starts with maternity leave. How much is that?
52 weeks of maternity leave and
Paid maternity leave if you're employed.
And if you're self-employed, then you can you can still get it. Yeah. So.
And it's some of it's earmarked for the mother, but most of it you can decide if it's the father or the mother who's going to take that time.
And you don't have to take all of it straight away. You can keep it, and you just have to use it before the child turns 9. So it's
luxury. It really is. And then from 11 months, the child can go into a nursery school, primary school, whatever, and that's all paid for.
No,
it's not all paid for.
It's not all paid for, but if you don't make a lot of money, then you get some of it paid for. But it's not free. School is free.
Yeah.
After that, so from 6.
So we got it quite easy compared to you in the States.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm moving.
Yeah. Hi.
It's nice.
How's your garden? Can I pitch a tent?
but we pay typically 50% of our income in tax, and sales taxes is 25%. So we are paying for it.
Yeah.
And it didn't make it like easy. It was still, it was still a struggle. And for money, it's not like it was it was a big money party, but it helps a lot, definitely.
Well, that's some amazing data there.
It's beautiful,
to think
isn't
about
it?
For us, for sure. As far as family support goes, that's super amazing. What about when you, for example, like an artist who doesn't necessarily have a child, or just all artists in general? What is are there healthy amounts of grants in Denmark for opening your studio, for making artwork, for public art? What's the field like there as far as that goes?
Yeah, there's a lot you can apply for, and there's also like a grant from the government that you can apply for. They have
the Arts Council. That's the big one. The Arts Council has a pool of money to share out, but you don't necessarily get it.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of smaller grants that you can, like, if you want to educate yourself further, or you want to travel, or you have a project, there's quite a lot you can apply for, like smaller amounts. But it's quite good.
Wonderful.
So that's, we do that as much as we can as well to be able to make new things and to travel and all the fun things.
Keep you creative. Sally, do you have any comments? Do you want to go next?
Yeah, we can go through the spectrum, because I think Canada is in between Sweden and the States. We have a lot of very similar benefits. So the 52 weeks of parental leave that can be split between the mother or the father. That's depending on whether you qualify for it. So you have to have been paying into unemployment insurance before that. But it's still very available. And there's daycare subsidies, which, I mean, I think without support from the Canadian government, my husband and I wouldn't be able to kind of continue the urban lifestyle, both of us working as artists, as we have been able to maintain. So we're like, you know, really grateful for having these supports in place. There's also a childcare benefit, a monthly one for depending on how many children you get. So yeah, like we're not completely taken care of, but it's a really big help to be able to continue as a low-income family.
That is wonderful. Good to know. A little bit closer for those of us looking to pitch tents on the other side of a border. All right, Jessica, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, we all know that the United States does not support parents in general, let alone artists. You know, that's always the first thing to get cut in a budget cut. And, you know, so I was an adjunct when I got pregnant. So I taught right up until I was having contractions at school with students like panicking around me. You know, I was like, this is real life education, children. And then I was just talking to my husband about it. I said, well, how long was it? It was like 4 weeks. And I went back and finished the semester. And I look back and I don't remember what happened. You know, it was so fast and so traumatic in a way. And, you know, so because there wasn't that support, it was about, you know, as an adjunct, I didn't have that. It wasn't built into my job as, you know, being able to get maternity leave. So it's it was a really difficult, you know, a really difficult thing to do, but it was what I had to do. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, so moving on to the next question here. So in the survey, I'm gonna dip back into that survey information a little bit here. 20% of respondents identified as single parents, which I found very interesting, and 56% stated that they don't have much support from nearby family. I don't think this is necessarily an accurate snapshot of the maker community that we have, but reflective of the fact that people who are drowning are most likely to be the ones searching for a lifeline. Additionally, those responding artists who have been able to attend residencies since becoming parents largely noted that 2 weeks was the maximum time they were able to be away from their family. So moving away from the government or your employer, your institution, do you have any residencies, private grant programs, or institutions that you can recommend as being particularly helpful or welcoming to parent artists? So if there's a residency or a grant program that you've found has been really receptive to your needs. So here's where we start hopefully getting a little bit prescriptive for those of us on here looking for, okay, this is all theoretically well and great, but what do I do? How do I move forward as an artist?
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead, Nat. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we've stayed away from the long residencies as well, because it hasn't been possible to be away for more than a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have that much experience about residencies or recommendations.
Me neither. I even have kind of stopped applying for the time being because it's just not realistic right now.
Yeah, and I did the Tacoma residency and the Wheaton residency, but Wheaton I could do because I'm close to home, so it's a different thing, and I can drive down and come back. And Tacoma was so short; it's just a week, and so I was able to handle that. So I think, within the glass community, if we're, talking about artists working in glass and looking for places to go, I think we're really, really lacking, across the world of that kind of support. It's starting to change, and I think it depends on how people approach it. You know, I've talked a lot with Leo Tukowski about it, and he's very forceful about saying, I'm going and I'm coming with my family, whether it's to teach or to do this or do a residency, or he's like, I'm not going, you know? So I never had that kind of, I was a lot more passive about it. So I just did like what Sally said, just wouldn't apply to certain things. But there is a site called mothersinarts.com resources. And it's a crowdsourced list of initiatives and grants and residencies for parent artists. There's also an artist in Philadelphia who, Andrew Simonet, who co-founded Artist U, which is like a grassroots organization, and it's another artist-run platform. And Creative Capital did a workshop with him, but he's created kind of an outlet for artists to go to share resources and, you know, other kinds of platforms. And he created a really wonderful document that he interviewed. I think it was like over 130 artists that are parents in Philadelphia, and recorded all of that information and how to be an artist that is not just surviving, but creating like a sustainable practice and living a life where we're not just these starving artists, you know, and so switching that. So I can recommend those two things.
Fantastic. I think definitely. At this point, it's time to open it up to the rest of our audience here to see what kind of questions we have. And okay, so the first question that we have in the pipeline for you guys is coming from the artistic director of Pilchuck Glass School, and he would like to know what it is that institutions such as Pilchuck can do to make it easier for you guys to be able to come and do these residencies. And I think we probably have danced around this a little bit, and it might seem obvious given how we've already been discussing this, but really what can institutions, our craft schools, our teaching institutions do to make themselves more welcoming to families? Sally, do you want to go ahead and start this one?
Sure. As far as residencies go, initially my first answer would just be shorter residencies. I think shorter is a little more doable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, space for sure, accommodation and opportunity for bringing family is I think welcome to lots of parent artists. Yeah, I mean, it's really, for me, it's always just being a matter of like adapting, you know, it's having a child was a life choice, and it's, you know, moving forward as an artist is just another way of, you know, adapting my life to work the way that I want to live. If it means not necessarily attending residencies for a few years, that's my choice. That's at least how I feel about it. I think support is important for sure, but finding solutions and adapting, I think, is also part of it.
I think.
Yeah, I would say. Sorry, Jessica.
No, go ahead then. Go. You go.
No, you go first. I went first last time.
Okay. I think one of the things that institutions as a whole can assist is this like removal of guilt of allowing those options to be very open and forward in any kind of application materials. It not this kind of like denial and this second thought, like I have to then ask to bring my family, or I have to ask, like it's assumed that you shouldn't. And then I feel bad about, you know, saying, well, hey, like I really want to do this and I can't do this, but I need my son to come with me. And, you know, and then you're negotiating one-on-one, like in the beginning, I feel like it should be the opposite. It should say, these are the things, do you have this? Do you have this? Like making things more accessible and removing that guilt. And that can come down to just even some paperwork, you know, of how it's presented and what questions people are not asking, you know, of the artists that they're asking to come to teach, to assist, to do other things. You know, it's something that it has always been kind of an afterthought. So I think that that's a big one, just to change our culture of thinking about it.
I think that's a great point. I mean, that's also, in terms of accessibility, it's just a matter of asking and providing options so that people don't have to raise their hands and point it out.
I love that. Thank you. Ned, back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I find teaching and residency so intense that actually I prefer to leave the kids behind. And it sounds mean, but I don't think I can be a good parent and focus on what I'm there to do at the same time. So if I could have the family along, that would be great, but I think that Karen doesn't want to babysit while I have all the fun either, or the other way around either. I don't want to babysit. So I feel a little bit like it's either or. I don't want to mix it, especially.
I think for us it's been good that we have been able to go away like one at a time to do teaching or like short residencies. Short residencies without children is definitely a good option that we've had a few times. Yeah, but yeah, it also comes down to the money often, that if we would like to bring, a partner and children, then, we couldn't possibly afford that if we would have to pay for 4 people to travel somewhere and stay and yeah.
If we have to travel. Karen had a residency in Denmark last year, the year before, without a glass studio. And she could just go and be in a little house and sit and draw and get ideas for 2 weeks. 3 weeks.
It was great.
Yeah, luxury.
I can recommend that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That place. Yeah,
But we have our own workshops, and making the glass is the least of it. It's the development of ideas that we need, the space, the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to wrap our minds around, is like what I saw a lot in the survey was people asking for empathy from their non-parent peers. People saying, that the biggest help to me would be other artists who don't have children understanding what it is that I'm going through, and understanding that it's not just a lack of time to make, but that lack of just like being able to focus, not being interrupted or mommed every 5 minutes. Like that's the gift of the residency. So that's a really interesting point that you guys are bringing up. I really appreciate that. Okay, do we have, does anyone want to use the raise hand feature, or you can either, oh, we got a Laura. I am unmuting you. Yes, please.
I thought that I would talk a little bit about what happens from the child's point of view.
Ooh, yes.
Because when Anna Matisse was 2, I started to teach at Pilchuck, and I had a nervous breakdown being away for like 3 weeks. And then when I was asked to teach when she was 6, I said, I'm never coming again unless I can bring her. And that was back in the day where no children were allowed on campus. So I just brought her. I brought my mom, who's an artist, as a TA, and she was absorbed into the Pilchuck family. And I brought her 5 times to Pilchuck until she was a teenager. And I said, oh, I'm not doing this anymore, too dangerous. She was having far too much fun. And then Lynn, I brought her, and Australia and everywhere, Japan, wherever I taught, I took her out of school and she came with me. And what happened was that she was immersed in this incredible artist maker culture. And I didn't mother her so much as everyone else did. It was a fantastic, I don't know if that would happen now in some of these places, but it was amazing. And so she ended up working, you all know, at Metropolitan Museum of Art, and is like very absorbed in history of objects. So by being an incredibly well-traveled child, she absorbed art in a different manner. She didn't become a maker, but she was very influenced by where I took her. So I think that it's a good experience. It can be a very good experience for the child, not when they're too little. I would never bring a younger child. I would bring a 8, 9, 10-year-old. And then they would learn what it's like to be in this incredible creative atmosphere with very welcoming people, actually. So I highly recommend bringing your children if you're teaching, if somehow it's allowed. You know, the place that you bring your children have to be accommodating, you know, have to, you know, she slept with me in the bed, so that was okay. But, you know, there's a kid running around and you have to worry about the danger of it as well. Hours, sometimes I never knew where she was. I trusted the family. Anyway, I think it's a really interesting proposal.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pilchuck wants to actually have classes where the kids are allowed. And I think that's a really good idea.
That's absolutely right, Laura. Thank you so much. And yeah, absolutely. Raising a daughter like Anna Matisse is the absolute end goal, I think, for any creative parent, because she's an amazing human, and you won the gold prize there, lady, for sure.
Well, she's been living with me for months.
You're still able to be in the same room. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's true. That's a really good point. And I think, you know, the family sessions at Pilchuck, which I know a lot of people on this Zoom right now were scheduled to be a part of in one way or another, but that's an amazing first step for our community. But like Ned brought up, it does, you know, bring up its own issues, because then you have this division of your attention, of your passion, you know. And I think from what I understand, I've never been, but it seems to me that a lot of people view Pilchuck as an escape, or view their time at these wonderful immersive institutions as an escape. And it's entirely possible that, you know, what you're escaping from is your parental duty. So it's a double-edged sword for sure, but hopefully what it's doing is at least giving people more options, and starting that conversation and creating that space for empathy and understanding. Thank you so much, Laura. Does anyone else have any response to Laura's wonderful energy?
I'm really appreciative to hear it. My first experience was hard, and definitely has been making me feel like that maybe I don't want to attempt it again. But age, I can understand, would be a huge factor, and that's enlightening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the family camps are also, you know, they're designed for, I think the minimum age is 8 or 9, which, you know, it's right when they're able to, you know, well, mine can safely hold a soldering iron. I know that. So, you know.
So even at 5, I was really looking forward to seeing how Alice would handle Pilchuck this summer. She would have been, you know, cool with it, but yeah, even a few more years, I think it'll be a lot easier.
I think so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura. All right, audience, I have a couple more questions prepared, but does anyone else have anything? If you're, anyone who has questions, just feel free to either use the raise hand or just go ahead and unmute yourself and jump in.
Hello.
Hello, Raven.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, welcome.
I guess it's not so much a question for the panel, but I just wanted to say that I really appreciated what Jessica said about just offering something up front is really amazing. Even the gesture means a lot, just because, I mean, we've taken Ren all over the place, and it's always like a question of if we can bring him or not, or if we can bring family,
Great
or
negotiations.
even a care provider for him if we're both teaching or something like that. I think that's huge as far as like from our standpoint, just opening with that and basically saying this is an option we want to offer, or there are some grants available, or we understand that that would be a financial burden for any institution, especially a nonprofit arts organization as well. But just to say we're trying from the get-go, I think is amazing. And And I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Jessica. Like just like opening with that is huge from my standpoint. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's acknowledgement. I think, there's so many layers to this and how so many parents navigate their parent life and their own lives and what roles they take on. And, if they're single parents or they're younger parents or they're older parents, it's just a really, it's a really deep thing, and there's no one direct answer for anything. And so as a community, we have such an amazing community of people that, we have the ability to really change the culture of talking about this and being open about it and being more accessible about this, but also many other things. So I think that acknowledgement in my mind is a huge stepping stone, and one that's pretty easy to do. Like you just acknowledge it. You don't have to, this isn't asking you to dump, $1 million into something. But yeah.
As you guys know, Robin and I usually a lot of times travel together because we're doing a lot of collaborative work, and we have a 6-year-old and a 16-year-old now. And that age difference is kind of nice because when we go in the summertime to workshops and things, we usually take the kids because they're not in school. When we're traveling during the school year, we have them home, and luckily in this great glass community, we usually have a glass artist friend of ours come and stay with the kids at our house for the week that we're working away. But in the summertime, we usually bring them because it's an adventure, and they, just like Laura was saying, they learn and everything. It is really hard to, if you don't have someone watching your children when you're there, to be focused. So it's nice to bring somebody along. When we taught at the Appalachian Center for Craft a couple summers ago, Ren was old enough to hang out with Phoenix on campus, and everything was right there on campus, and we stayed on campus in a little, cabin. So we didn't have to have an extra sitter that time, so that was nice. It's just a week long. So I think it's, just depending on the situation. So we usually, have to feel out each place and the timing and all that. But it is great when communities are open to having children on campus and allowing the whole family to come, especially both artists working together, just like Raven and Kelly do, and a lot of couples that are in glass, Ned and Karen, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think it might be piling on a little bit, but if there was someone that was like a care provider, or if you were able to bring another person that's not the parent,
right,
or if there was a bed for someone like that, then you don't have that split personality of parent and artist, or you can rest assured that your kid's in good care and at least being watched over or whatever. Yeah. Especially for the youngers,
Yeah, definitely when they're younger. And often if you have to bring somebody, then that's an extra plane ticket for the traveler. It's nice if you can, find somebody in the community that is friends and you can trust that will watch them there. That's possibly a thing we've done, or finding like a little school that is just, when we did some residencies in Arizona, there was a school found where Phoenix was able to jump in because it was during the school time, or like summer camps I've done. Actually, that's right. When we went to Appalachia, I did do a summer camp during the day for Phoenix. I forgot about that. So Ren could explore. So that's something that I've looked into when I travel with her. Did a gymnastics camp for the week. Yeah. So.
It's a really good idea to take a carer take a carer with you, I think, because when we have the kids with us to things, they hate the glass things. They're so bored. They want our attention. There's no glass. They don't want everyone else getting our attention. But if they had a friend with them, or a grandparent, or someone could be there to entertain them, that'd be great.
That's the best way.
Yeah.
Family member. Yeah.
We were just in Japan a few months ago, and the kids said no glass.
Maybe one day they'll understand how cool it is. That's still my hope there.
Our teenager never got into glass, but he does like to film glass making now, so that's cool.
It's good.
He's doing amazing things with that medium too. Wow, thank you so much for all of that. I think what Julia's talking about with, making these little excursions into an adventure is really super important. And I also want to talk about briefly what Jess was referring to, these methods of accessibility for parents. I think they have the potential to make our community more accessible in general. I don't think it's any big shock to say that, there's a barrier to entry in glass, unfortunately, because of the cost. Hello, oh look, we have a run. We have barrier to entry as far as materials go, as far as the knowledge base. And I think that having these methods of accessibility could make our community's commitment to diversity in general stronger, just from the get-go, being like, what can we do? These institutions asking artists, what can we do to make you able to be here? Not just for parents, but for everyone who's not operating at an advantage. All right, next, do we have any more audience questions? I do have one more question. And this one is specifically kind of more for you, Ned. I found in my research that so many of the dissertations and dissections on parenting while arting were written from a wonderful and feminist but motherhood-honed lens. Very few touched on the support systems for fathers, which you did touch on the fact that Denmark and Scandinavia have equal attribution of assets for that, which is great. But from even more of like an emotional or a psychosocial perspective, it seems like that's just indicative that the particular struggle of the bulk of childcare falls mostly on women to this day, just like as Jess was talking about earlier, those emotional burdens, that emotional caregiving. So it seems almost like this literature is, it's like a self-perpetuating cycle. You specifically made artwork inspired by your daughter after becoming a father. So I don't think I have to ask you whether it affected your practice. How do you feel that support systems for creative fathers specifically are succeeding or failing in your world? Sorry to put you on the spot there, but
Yeah.
important.
No.
Raven, if you have any commentary there, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Well, I was expecting you to throw tomatoes at me, so I think it's been so nice of being a man.
No misandry here.
But I think it is different. I think we see people coming into our workshop and they talk to Karen and they ask to see the boss. And there is this sort of, doesn't happen very often, but it hurts when it does. But yeah, there are gender roles, and some of them you can do something about, and some of them just seem to exist. Somehow when Karen was pregnant and the children were babies still, somehow it became my role to work harder, to spend more time in the studio so Karen could breastfeed and do things at home. But as they got older, I think we got quite good at sharing that responsibility. But somehow my thoughts go towards keeping the business running, and Karen's thoughts go towards keeping the family together.
Yeah, it's difficult to change, those, roles, I guess. But it's, we're working on it.
Yeah, and it's an issue having a workshop together, living together, and having children together, doing things together in our free time. There's a lot of things that we've had to work through and find solutions for, so we both can be happy with the situation.
I definitely saw Julia nodding along with you there at that living together, working together.
And being stuck at home all the time now together.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think as far as gender roles go, it's really hard to negate the motherhood thing. Is just, especially like Ned was saying, when they're young, that connection is so strong that there's a reason, even though women are out and career oriented and making and being artists, that those gender roles still hold on all this time, is that connection, I think, is really, really, really strong. So I don't know, it's an interesting thing to balance, I think. I know that that I don't know, that's a tough one. I think that as from my standpoint, I have got a lot of opportunities and a lot of other things offered to me that I think come from a bias, kind of like what Ned was saying of, oh, where's the boss? If it's, you know, it's just assumed roles somehow. But yeah, I mean, as far as sharing that role in the artistic realm, I think it does start to shift and balance more as the kids get older, and that's a big reason, I think, like having that third person. When Kelly and I went to Japan, her mom came with us and took care of Ren while we were teaching, and that was so amazing. Because I know in my heart of hearts, like, Kelly would probably do the majority of caretaking, even if I was trying, just because
I would be the default if something was happening to Ren or he was upset about something. I would definitely, you know, be the one to step out happily. But that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But when the babies
we
are
were grateful
small,
to have my mom there.
when the babies are small, I mean, Karen hasn't slept all night because she's been breastfeeding, and you know, there is this attachment that you can't avoid, and as a husband, as a partner, there's very little that you can do when they're so small. You can maybe go for a walk while they sleep. That's it. So yeah, there is this natural tendency for the man to go out and provide while the mother stays home.
Like baked into these gender roles that we're talking about is like the biological change and like the genetic, you know, change that we all experience. Men and women experience differently, and we're programmed to handle childcare differently. And I think that it's almost, you know, it's hard to buck those. That
So how long does that last? A year or two? And then there's not really any excuse after that, is there?
Maybe. I don't know.
Excellent point. Okay. All right, so we are running pretty close to the end of our allotted time here, but we do have another moment for some, if anyone has any closing thoughts, closing suggestions, or if there are any last questions or comments from the audience, I'd be more than happy to entertain that. Scrolling through gallery view here to make sure I don't miss any waved hands or anything. Nope. Okay. Any closing thoughts from panelists today on any of the conversations that we're starting and directions that we're moving towards?
I was thinking back to the point of having a caregiver when you go to a residency. You were wondering what Pilchuck could do if they could compile like a local list of people that want to take on that role when you come there. And it, you know, some friend of friends, I mean, the glass community is small, hopefully, you know, would know and be comfortable with that kind of situation, but you could have a list of people in the area that could come and stay on campus with the kids or during the day, and I don't know.
Absolutely, that's such an interesting point. A list of locally vetted caregivers, or even, you know, college students who are coming, for example, to Oxbow, and they're coming to Oxbow and they need some way to make money to pay for their class there, and
they could stay on after, instead of, you know, staying on to work in the kitchen, they can stay on to take care of the kids.
Exactly. I think that's a really amazing point, Julia. Thank you. Because I'm sure that we've all experienced traveling, and you know, you're in a new town. What do? You find a new babysitting service. You know, these are people you don't know, you don't trust. But I think what Laura said earlier was like, you know, we are a family. The Glass family is an amazing community, and having this network of trust is an asset that we could really, I mean, Julia and I are both affiliated with the Chrysler Museum, where we have this amazing assistantship program. Pretty much every single one of my children's caregivers for the past 4 years has been a studio assistant, because I trust them, their family. And that's an amazing asset that we're lucky to have. So thank you for that, Julia. Anybody else?
Oh, I think Laura's trying to talk.
Oh, Laura.
Laura's always trying to talk.
Yay, Laura.
What we did also at Pilchuck when Anna was older is that she worked in the kitchen. So she would get, you know, she could be useful. And I did teach her how to blow glass at a younger age, so she could, you know, help with the classes as well. Not as a glass blower, but she helped make the nervous people in the beginning classes feel better. It was amazing. And so there could be places for older kids. I mean, you know, these schools are not going to have like 50 teenagers come in, or kids. We're talking about 1 or 2, you know, per session. So I think these places are probably wise enough now to figure out people would like to bring children at different ages. You know, I brought one of her friends, slightly older friends. They just did Harry Potter stuff all day. Didn't even come into the shop much. So each case is very individual. Yeah. I think it's a great topic, and congratulations for bringing it up. Nobody even, you know, has brought this up before, really.
Thank you, Laura. Well, much to my pleasant surprise, the more research I did and the more I dug into this, it's been a topic of conversation, not necessarily in our community, but looking at, you know, these, like Jessica was talking about her, these lists of that mother artists have compiled, looking at these opportunities. And yeah, but thank you, Laura. And as a note, we did have, based off of that last little segue, one of our participants today, Haley, is saying that yes, absolutely, as a recent college grad, she would love to be a child caregiver during workshops. So this is something that, you know, people are interested in, to have that opportunity. Yeah, great, fantastic. All right, any final thoughts from our amazing panelists or audience today?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you, you know, for inviting me, and it was so nice to see all the people here, and I've always watched how people are navigating, how they raise their kids, and been inspired by, you know, all of you in so many different ways, and wanting, you know, my son to have some of those experiences at Pilchuck, and wanting, you know, to share his passion for making and creativity. And so I think it's really nice to see, you know, this conversation starting, and it's just like scratching the surface on many levels. So
yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jess. Okay, well, that is going to be all the time that we have for today. I want to thank each and every one of you amazing panelists for your contributions and your time. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. Glass Art Society, of course, thanks to them for believing that this is a conversation that we need to start having. And I think that's a really important thing to note. This is just the beginning. And the work that we do to raise awareness and empathy will hopefully make our community at large a more diverse and accessible place. So thank you. If anyone missed any part of this, this will be on the Glass Art Society virtual conference, May 21st to 23rd. So you can tune in again then. And stay healthy out there, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aww.
Glassy family reunion. Tiny conference on a Zoom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.